Hello and welcome to my video on how to build a database application that can either be used on your computer network or via mobile phones. My name is Kevin Davis and I've been building database applications for over 30 years now, and I came across this piece of software by Appgini about 3 years ago, and it saves hours and hours of coding, and it's ideal for people that are pretty competent with Excel spreadsheets but have very limited knowledge of coding itself. So without further ado, I'll get straight into it. The first thing you're going to need is the application itself, called Appgini. Now these can be purchased online. That's the address there. The typical price for this is $99, which is probably about just over £60. You can download free trials, so you don't have to pay for this, but if you are serious about applications, then I think you will definitely be worth the investment from this. What this bit of software does is that it helps you set up the database, and then once you've set up the database in terms of tables and fields, you can then generate the coded needed for it to run on a server. That's a web server, or if you're going to run it in-house, you can run it on your internal web server. If you don't know what I'm talking about, just hang on. If you're running it in-house and you haven't got a server, you can get a open source software called XAMPP, X-A-M-P-P. Just put it into Google or whatever search engine you're using, fire it up, and they'll pretty much direct you directly to a page where you can download it for free. This is open software, doesn't cost any money. Lots of people use it for testing of web applications prior to actually going live, but this is a fairly good bit of software and it will work on an internal server. Once you've downloaded XAMPP, you just run two applications on there, Apache and MySQL, and you'll get the ports up here showing you on there. If you want to know more about that, just Google it and YouTube it, and it will tell you how to set it all up and do things. It's pretty straightforward. If you want to go and configure it, you just go into the admin side of things and away you go. Okay, so once you've downloaded the Appgini bit of software and fired it up, you will get this nice welcome screen here. The first thing you'll get is just the database title itself. You can just change that by clicking it and over typing it to an application that you want. So in this instance, we're going to call it training. Now, in order not to bore you too much with the setting up of the tables and the fields, I've actually preloaded an application for this. Here is my preloaded application, and as you can see, I've got 6 tables on there. Each table is built up of fields. These fields can be configured individually. For example, the photo field is I'm allowing images to be loaded. Title I wanted to restrict to certain choices. You've got things like email addresses, which will automatically create links if you've got the email address typed into it. There are also lookup fields on here for things like employment, whereby I want to control things like names of employees. It now enables the application to pull up the name and the surname of the individual and enter it into it. And all of this will be done automatically once the tables fields have been generated. Once the database has been saved, you can create the coding by using this little magic wand here. I'm going to create this application in a directory called XAMPP. I'll talk you through this bit because this bit took me a bit of time just initially when I first started using it. When you download XAMPP, it will create a folder, or you'll put it in a folder. I've called it XAMPP on here, and then when you start running it, you'll run it from this particular location, and when you do that, it automatically sets up a server directory, which is htdocs. Now on here I've created a subfolder called training, and what that will do is it will generate all the coding from this software relating to the tables and the fields that we've created here. And what it will do is it will ask you whether you want to overwrite any existing files on there, and I just say yes. Every single thing flashing up there is a file that's been created by this Appgini program. So now I'm going to close this and go to a web browser. Now if you go to your web browser page, you type in localhost, and bearing in mind that we put this in the training subfolder, you need to then type up training, and as soon as you do that is that you'll be faced with this screen. You'll only get faced with this screen once because it needs to set up what they call a configuration file. So in there it will say we need the name of your database server, the name of the database, the username for the database, and the password. So that's the screen you will be faced with. So in here we've got training is the database name on there, the username for getting in there is that, and my password is there. It will also ask me for a super user admin name. Now do remember this, don't lose this one. I'm going to put down there my name. I'm also going to put in my email address. Okay, and I will now create a password, and this is what I will need every time I log into the application itself. So I'm creating a master username. You only do this once and it sits in the configuration file on the server. It will email me my link-in details to the email address I've got there, and this is the database on XAMPP that's been created. So I've created a database on there called training, and I've also got a username and password set up for that table. Find out how to do that on YouTube. Once you've done that, you then go submit. It says, right, okay, you're now ready to go in there. You only get this screen once. You can import data in using CSV files, so I'm just going to go straight in, and here we are. So from that application we've now got employees, employment, job functions, training records, appraisal records and qualifications. So if we go to the employees folder, I've created two on there already, but you can add your own. So for example, you may say, okay, this is Mrs. I'm making up these names, by the way, they're completely fictitious. So you can just go through this, and once you've entered in all the details down there, even email addresses, it will actually allow you to save this. So if you go back to the training records, you will see now it's just been added here. You can also have employment, so if you want to add a new employment, this is normally a payroll number, a reference number, so on there, and it gives you now a drop down menu. We've just added Susan Rayner in there, and we'll say that Susan Rayner reports through to Jane Franks. You can then put the date that they start, which could be today's date on there. You've also got things on there where the table's been set up, left, position, date left, induction date, inducted by, so on and so forth. Okay. You've got job functions, so on here you can create a new job function. So the job title could be on here, well, let's say it could be first aider. Be the first revision, and it reports through, say, to the managing director. Bearing in mind it could be a small company, and the date it was created. Again, we can use today's date, and we could also say that Jane has approved this job function. So here is first aider for company. Okay, and now we look at the job functions. We've got a first aider, managing director and sales manager. So the first aider reports through to the managing director. So when you're creating new roles now, an employee could be starting on, let's say, Peter Downs. We can have a look at their job functions on here. Sorry, we'll add a training record. Is a first aider on here, and he could have been approved by. So when we come back to the training records, we can look at employees like Peter and have a look at his training records to see what he's qualified for, and we can say he's under training on there as a first aider, but we can now, he's been provisionally approved. And if you're looking at functions like first aiders, you can have a look at the people that have been approved for it. So, you know, the database application is quite a powerful application on the either the web server or on your own network. Now, these programs can be run either in-house, so that nobody else from outside your firewall can get access to it, or it could be run on the web itself. It's entirely up to you how you actually want to do that. You also have a functionality in here. You can export this information, if you wanted to, into a CSV file, which can be opened up by Excel. Here, where you can manipulate data. Also, if you save in this format, you can import the data as well. So if you've got lots of files whereby it's been created and you can save it as a CSV file, you can import it into these applications. Now, the other thing with this application is that as a super admin user, you can actually restrict access to certain fields. Now, at the moment, we've got complete access to all of this, but let's say that you are a manager and you want to know who's actually been trained up for certain jobs. What you can do is just leave two records on there. You can leave the training records and the job functions, and I'm just going to talk you through how to do that. Okay, so we want to set up a user to access the database, but we don't want them to have access to the whole database. So how do we restrict the access to it? There's only one user, and that's the very first user that you put in there that can have access to the admin area in the way that I'm going to show you now here. So under the admin area, you can set up a group. So you may want to create a group called managers. So you're going to save the managers group. Now, underneath here, we've got all those tables, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 tables on here. At the moment, they've got no permissions to insert records, view records, edit records, or delete records. But what we do want them to do is we want them to be able to look at training records. So we're going to say, yes, you can view all the training records in there. And we also want you to have a look at all the functions in there, but we don't want you to be able to edit these, and we don't want you to delete these. Okay, so that is what the user group managers will allow you to do. Now, having a group is one thing. What you now need to do is allocate members to it. So let's add a member. So let's say we're going to add a manager, and we call it manager. To have access to it, and we'll give it a password. We'll just go 1, 2, 3, 4. That's going to be the password, 1, 2, 3, 4. We will then create a email. I'm going to send it back to myself, but if you've got managers on here, you might have something like Jane Fairfax. His a manager, and that's going to be their username, and you'll give them a unique password so that they can access it, and they'll probably give you their email address as well, so you can send all the details through to their email address. Now on here you write this down, managers 1 2 3 4. Now we're going to approve those. It's now saved that. Now we can check how many members we've got on here. So we've got myself, which is the master member, and then we've got manager. So a username, when they log in with the name manager 1 2 3 4, they'll be able to see the tables that we've allowed them access to. So I'm going to sign out now. Now in here, if you try and bypass this, it will say your previous login attempt has failed. Now there are ways that you can set this up that you limit the amount of times that they try this, but in this instance it will allow you to keep trying until you get in there. So on here we're going to write manager, and now we're going to put in the 1 2 3 4, and we're going to sign in. Now on the top here you'll see job functions and training records, and that's all it will allow you to go in there. So if you want to have a look at the job functions, it says, oh, we got first aider, managing director, sales manager. So I want to find out who the first aiders are. Again, it will allow me to print this out, but it won't allow me to do anything else. And I can have a look at the training records related to that particular individual. And it gives me access to nothing else. Now, in terms of a database application, that's quite powerful. Right, so there you are. That's the application program that I've used for generating that. If you want to have a look and a play around with this particular piece of software, I'll give you the details at the end where you can log into my website, and I'll allow you admin privileges, but not the super admin privileges, where you can go in there, add records and experiment with the actual database itself. But that coding that you see on the website has to be changed via this application generator here. So if you wanted to make modifications to the actual fields that you've got on there, how they're displayed, this is what you'd need to do. You'd need to get back into this, because this generates the coding that actually runs the software on the actual server itself. So once the software has been generated using this magic button here, and that coding has then been uploaded to your server or put into your relevant directory, then you will actually see the changes in place. So the software we're using here is called Appgini. Thank you for looking at this video. If you want to find the web address for trialing this out on your mobile phone, it's coming up next. So to try the bit of software out on your mobile phone, please use it sensibly. Don't try and corrupt anything in there too much. Normally you would hide these database locations from the general public and only release it to people that you know that you want to have access to it. So this is really what I'm doing here. If you go to this web address, www.mcs-support.co.uk/training, use the name tester and let me in. You will have admin settings on this. That means that you can go through there and have access to all the tables and fields on there, and you'll be able to import and export data as you need. My name's Kevin Davis. Thank you for watching, and hopefully it's been of some help.